Hello, Trevor.
Hey Jeff, how you doing?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's another fine day.
It is a beautiful day. It snowed this morning,
Same
and by
here.
noon it had melted. So
Yes.
I was very happy to see it go away.
Yeah, we're gonna have 2 days of like 60-degree weather, and then it's gonna get colder again. So,
Oh, well, yeah, it's supposed to be a really nice weekend. This weekend is CincyCon, and so the last year for CincyCon, it was bitterly cold. And I can remember Luell Lu was there with me, and we were both in our respective little booths, and I was just frigid. You were just huddled, right? You could feel the cold waves coming off the metal walls of this building, and it was not fun. So I'm much more excited about this one because it's going to be in the 50s and 60s, so I won't have that problem.
yeah, I'm a bit sad because you mentioned a number of people were asking if I was going to make it, and I said no. But then Lou said, "Hey, I got the free ticket. I got a Airbnb. Just show up." And I was like, "Oh, if only I didn't have other things going on."
Yep.
My wife's like, well, you could just leave on Saturday morning. It's like, no, that just would be that'd be a bit much to do. So sounds like the gang's gonna all be there at CincyCon. So at least the DCC gang.
Yeah, this is historically a miniatures game or convention, and so there is a group called OINK, Ohio, Indiana, Northern Kentucky Miniatures Gaming Association, or something like this, right? And they have put on CincyCon. I think this is the, I don't know, 20th or something, 16th. I can't remember now exactly off the top of my head, but 16th or 17th CincyCon, I think. They have a huge presence in the wargaming community here in Cincinnati, and so they get together on a very regular basis. They have a component of them. They're always at Gen Con. If you've ever been in the miniature gaming area in Gen Con, there's a huge spaceship that's like 40 or 50 feet long, and it splits in half. It's actually a Battlefleet Gothic cruiser from Warhammer 40,000, and it splits in half, and they have shelves and everything. You can go in there and play games inside this cruiser.
No, neat.
And so these guys they've been together as a group for, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 years. And certainly since I've been going to Gen Con, they have been involved. I have seen that cruiser for so long. And every year it gets a little more complicated. They like add things to it and stuff. So these guys have been doing this CincyCon for a long time. And they are all also closet role playing gamers, right? And so, there's this, I don't know, for those of us who are interested in miniatures and role playing games, there's this age old struggle of what do you do with your time when your friends show up? Do you play miniature games or do you role play? And each group kind of has to make that decision. These guys play miniatures, but they love role playing games, and I prefer to play role playing games, but I love miniatures, and I just don't get enough time to do both. So anyway, so they're trying to expand, and they're really they've got several DCC aficionados, and they they've invited us to try and build that community. There's probably 200 regular DCC players in the Cincinnati area.
That's pretty incredible, really. Well,
Yeah,
maybe it's not that incredible, but I think it's the idea that there's probably a community. I mean, I'm wondering if it's because you could maybe say the same thing, and there's 500 people in the Chicagoland area or whatever, but
yeah.
but maybe they're not as gelled.
It's not as so the miniature wargamer guys are really gelled because they do little internal tournaments and everything and stuff like this, and so they have a much more tight knit community. And so what we've been trying to do, I know Lou has been involved with this, Ed Stanek and myself have been trying to get out the word to people, that hey, CincyCon is a relatively cheap. I think badges are 20 or 30 bucks. B, it's at an odd time of year for conventions in the Midwest, so February, March is the beginning of the convention season, so it's early. It's We're usually coming out of the cold, and people like to get out. You got a little cabin fever maybe, and so you get out and see people. Um, and then C, it's in Hamilton County, or it's in the little town of Miami, Hamilton, or whatever it is. It's in the northwest corner of Cincinnati, and so it's also close to Dayton, and so there's a whole group of people that can come from both places, and so that's nice. It's got a good situation, and it's just a generally fun little convention. So they have a whole bunch of food internally. They have Cincinnati chili that they make themselves. They bring in pizza, they do hot dogs, they do hamburgers, they do tons of food that you can just buy there at the concession stand, and so they keep you pretty busy. So it's a nice little setup.
Yeah, it
And
sounds like it.
if you've ever liked the old miniatures, like little whether it's airplanes like biplanes, or whether it's Napoleonic naval warfare or anything, all those guys are there too.
Yeah, I've enjoyed. Uh, Years ago, I used to attend Winter War quite often, and they had a pretty strong miniatures presence. And a lot of times, you know, I would kind of look at both the RPGs and the minis. 'Cause I don't get to play minis. I don't own minis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but I do enjoy playing when people have all the minis on a table already set up, and I just get to play. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with that.
No, absolutely. So it's kind
What?
of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, so whether it's zombies, military units dealing with zombies in a urban environment, or it's French Indian War, it's all fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so they're a nice group of guys and gals, and they also have a charity. I forget how much they've donated, but they have a food bank charity and everything that they work pretty intimately with, and so it's a nice little convention, and it's enjoyable. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely next year it will be my plan. So
well, I look forward to seeing you there.
yeah, and I also for some reason I extended the amount of distance it was from my home, so it's I think just a little over 4 hours, so it's pretty doable.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think it's very. It's. I mean, you're probably an hour or two from Lou, and
No, about I think about 3 hours from Indianapolis, and probably about another hour from Cincinnati, I
yeah,
think.
hour.
Hour and a
So
half.
so it's not hard to get here. It's a little longer for Nick, but Lou can get to, especially Hamilton, which is I'm an hour east of Hamilton, of where this place is. So I mean, Cincinnati is the metroplex. It's about an hour across to get anywhere from the east to west side.
So
So yeah,
when you're doing this, you're not this isn't just you. You're not setting up for like your own business. Was it Blind Eye Visionary? No, I'm gonna
blind
mess.
visionary. Yeah.
Blind Visionary. Yeah. So you're doing this. I'm assuming for Goodman Games.
Right. So this will be so I'm running the Goodman Games booth, and there'll be blind visionary products there. Lou is just two tables down from me, and he's running his Dandelion Press, and the cool thing is that these guys have given us like one booth between us, so third party publishers can come in and man it for a couple hours, and then they put tables, gaming tables, right in front of our booths, so people can come run Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's totally booked for the whole weekend with Dungeon. There's 23 Dungeon Crawl Classics events, and everything. So there's tons of stuff. It's just getting people out and making them aware of it. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so there's 7 third-party publishers in the Cincinnati area for Dungeon Crawl Classics. Well,
Wow.
you there's a lot of us. They won't all be in attendance, but getting people down, and like I said, we got this like little 6 foot wide booth area that you can set up some stuff for a day or two, and it doesn't cost you any money. Run a couple of events, and you're good to go. So yeah, yeah, it should be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
So are you running any games while you're there, or are you just manning the booth?
I am not running anything. I don't think. No, I'm running something at Dungeon Con this year. Um, I am not running anything for me at CincyCon. So I do have a lot of things I could run. But since I'm manning the booth, that's kind of my focus. I'm just going through to make sure that I am not lying.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I am not lying. I am only manning the booth.
So no Earthcrawl class or Earthcrawl.
No, no, I have an open game of Earthcrawl every kind of first, third, and fourth, or kind of every other week at an open gaming or at a gaming store, and then I run a every other week Friday game with my friends.
So how's
Uh,
that? So you go to a gaming store, you have an open table, and people join. Do you find that you get many people showing up for that?
yeah, yeah. I have between 4 and 8 players most time. I haven't actually been advertising as much lately, but I need to get back into that. Um, the end of the year was kind of busy for me. But and what I immediately got was I got a whole like Nick, I got a whole bunch of regulars, and then I have people drop in and out. And so
Right. You
so
have to kind of get a group of like 8 people to in order to get regularly
yeah,
4 people or something like
four
that.
people. And so we got this little core group of folks that show up really routinely, and they're super. Originally it started out as I'm just going to do some play testing. I'm going to do these things, and I didn't know how long I didn't know if it would be permanent, like if I do it ongoing or not. But those guys, the first group that showed up and sat down within about 4 or 5 sessions, they were like, "Well, we're really enjoying this, and we'd really, you keep telling us this is supposed to be, Earthcrawl is more of a campaign setting, and it's geared more for campaign style play instead of one shots. Mainly because I am geared more to campaign play, and so these guys were really interested in exploring campaign play, which is hard to do with one shots. And so there's a lot of mechanics I've been working on that shine in campaign play and don't necessarily shine in one shots. And so things like well, I've overhauled NPC reaction tables for they don't exist in Earthcrawl proper, or in Dungeon Crawl Classics or Mutant Crawl Classics proper. So I built a whole system for that and things like
S-
that.
So did you use, is it like a variation of what's was in the BX, or did you go somewhere else other than
It's
that?
a it is a variation of what is in BX. And what it does is it gives you and it's a little more complex. So in BX, you were rolling like 2d6, if I remember correctly,
Yes.
and that was giving you a curve, a kind of a little bell curve,
Yep.
and there were more common, things that popped up and other things. You're still doing that. What they're making is they're making checks with a normal die roll. And so DCC's D20 base, so we're making a kind of a D20 based roll. Although that die can go up and down because of the dice chain. And then what I've actually done is I've put it into 4 columns. I've actually got 4 times the reaction table that BX had. Instead of one result table, this result table is shaded by the actions of the characters. If your characters are like complete and utter depraved people, that is one column versus we're super happy and friendly people, right? And the idea being is that how you act influences the outcome you see from the NPC, and how far you can move them, right?
Well, and I think too, like right, like a hostile reaction. If you come across a group of orcs, hostile reaction is one thing, but a merchant in a city is another.
That's right. And so they you have a randomized table that says where is this person at right now, right? Are they inherently hostile or are they super friendly or whatever? And so that's all randomized for you because the point of this of a reaction table is for a judge to be able to say, "Oh, we're having an encounter. It's not what I planned or whatever, but I need to know what this person's attitude is." You roll a die. Okay, their attitude is they're unhelpful, right? And the player's like, well, we want to make them helpful, right? We want to influence them. We need to get them to give us the map or whatever it is. And so it gives you a starting point, And then what it does is, like I said, based on how the players approach the role playing aspect of that, depends what column you're in. We're going to threaten them or we're going to try and butter them up, kind of thing. And then, and then that shifts that initial reaction based on how good that die roll is, right? And the role playing aspect. So there's some metering there. And then I also built onto that a quid pro quo table. And I'm thinking about adding one more component to it, but the quid pro quo table says, I am willing to do something if you're willing to do this for me, right?
Yeah.
So once the players get the NPC to respond the way they want to, it isn't always just, oh yeah, here's the map, have a good day. It's, I'm willing to give you this map, but I need you to help me with this thing. And so I think I've got about a 20 row table that says, what does this person want? What is their dilemma? Right? Well, the dilemma is, I'm trying to save somebody, or I'm trying to avenge my father, or whatever it is, right? So there's a whole bunch of random outcomes or random situations, and the desired outcome is randomized as well, right? My father has been killed. I'm trying to avenge them. I'm trying to help the person who killed them. I'm trying to, so there's a whole bunch of things that allow for a lot of different emergent play opportunities in that interaction. So
Yeah, it sounds more complicated than what I was thinking about doing. I thought about just doing the 2d6, but just do the up and down
yeah,
of the dice chain.
yeah. Well, what I'm really looking to do is create opportunities that have a hook, right?
Right.
And so,
It,
you
it,
know,
it's it's narratively significant. It's not just a roll. They
that's
say
right.
no.
They say no,
Now they say no, but
right? Yeah, and so there's a couple things that there's a little low kind of a logic flow chart that comes out of those interactions, and um, so yeah, that's the first iteration of it. I've tried it a couple times now. I've gotten to play with it, and it works pretty well. It leads to unique and varying outcomes, which is what I want. That aren't just my idea, right? They need to be the point of making a tool like that is to give a new pathway to a judge and the players that isn't just the same old one that the judge defaults on to. Because what you'll notice if you don't have a randomizing table is I have this set ideal of how an encounter goes, and you'll see it again and again and again and again and again. And I don't you don't always see it when you're running, but
well, you're under
gosh darn,
cognitive
you see it
load.
when you're playing.
You're
What?
you're you're under cognitive load. Your brain is processing, trying to handle the adventure, trying to handle the
Yeah,
situation, trying to think ahead, and then to create something that you have to be very creative and spontaneous when you're very focused. It's difficult. So this allows you to just not have to expend it out, and I think it will produce a connection that you couldn't. I
yes,
don't say could. Like in the individual one, you couldn't. You probably could, maybe somehow, but be consistently doing something different over time is almost impossible, I think,
that's
on the
right.
fly.
That's right. And have it be cool and exciting and different, right? And so that's one example. The other thing is you interviewed some Wild West guys out of the UK
Yeah.
2 years ago now. And their Kickstarter funded, I backed it because of that, by the way, just so you can tell them, hey, people back because of these interviews. But I listened to that and they were talking about having your levels of NPCs that were like henchmen, that were like, hey, this is my close buddy, my drunk uncle or whatever it is, who's always running around with me, and I'm going to send him off to the neighboring town to have him go do something. And then there was a random table, he disappears for 3 months and he comes back and you find out that he's being chased by the law because he accidentally, he stole someone's mule or something, right? And that was a really interesting thing too. So I built a system, kind of I'd already wanted information and relationships to be important in Earthcrawl, um, at some level. It's not when you go down to the surface of the planet, but when you come back to the planet or come back to the orbital colonies, um, it's super important having relationships. So you have an occupation in Dungeon Crawl Classics, this basic thing that you do. And I've got an occupation table, and instead of like giving people a shovel and a gun or something, right? I'm like, you are a doctor. and you're a doctor of, you know, emergency surgery, and you have a henchman. That henchman happens to be your organizing assistant, and so there's a whole bunch of that kind of going on. There's a lot of contacts and allies, or you're a psychotherapist in your occupation, right? You've been driven to this desperation of going down to the surface of the planet to sift through the debris of the earth after society has fallen. But because of whatever reason. But in your, your day job, you were a psychoanalyst, and you happen to know like D4 client secrets, right? And so there was all these little hooks that were going into this occupation table. And so I took the idea those guys had for the Weird West, or for the Wild West, henchmen and everything, and built that up. And so you can have, gosh, let me think of it off the top of my head. You can have contacts. Those are people that you can basically trade for information. You can basically get something out of them. Hey, call them up and say, I need this piece of equipment. Can you help me with it? They're one shot use. Then you can have, henchmen. They're people who are allied to you directly, and they run around with you. You can have allies, which are a little higher level henchmen and stuff like this. And you can send them off to do missions. And then there's random tables to determine what happens. They succeed, but they, end up in jail, or they end up being deported to a different colony or something like this, right? And so you find that out later what's actually happened. But you can send them off, they have agency. And so that's kind of interesting too, because those resources are things that are not traditionally looked for in a Dungeon Crawl Classics game.
Well, I think in general, yeah, because I think what you're looking at is like you say, your campaign play, right?
Yeah,
And so you've kind of created a system where people are locked into a specific location.
right,
And
right.
so then it matters, right? It really does matter what
Yes,
happens to the NPC.
yeah. And not only that, so the premise of the game, just in case people are unclear of what we're talking about, the premise of the game, it's set about 270 years in our future. Um, and about 30 or 40 years from now, there is an apocalyptic event that wipes out most of North America. Basically, the Yellowstone Supervolcano erupts and just obliterates North America, which leads to a whole bunch of warfare and limited nuclear strikes against allies and things like this, and enemies, and as suddenly catastrophically the United States doesn't exist anymore. Um, and the Earth is enshrouded in this kind of nuclear winter from the supervolcano, but then augmented by all these little internecine wars and stuff, right? And this nuclear fallout. And they're releasing chemical agents and biological agents to wipe out old grudges and stuff like this. So the Earth becomes inhospitable. And within about, nobody's quite certain, but over a period of maybe 6 months, 90%, 95% of humanity is obliterated. And it just so happens we are continuing to build up in space. And so there's about 10 to 20,000 people up in space at the time that this happens. And so suddenly they are clinging to survival because they're very dependent upon the earth to make things happen. And so fast forward 200 years, they have grown to some level of stability, basic stability, but they still need to go to the planet's surface and scrounge things and scavenge like rare earth elements and stuff like this, heavy metals, right? Stuff you need for circuit boards, stuff like that. And
Yeah,
so
because you
it
don't have those resources up in space, at
you don't
least
have
on
those
an orbiting platform. So
yeah. And so that's the situation. So it's this dystopian future that looks nice and shiny on the surface, but has a very dark underbelly. Because you're control, everything is controlled by these corporocratic entities that owned the space stations when the world died, and you were just up there as a client and everything, building something or growing something or testing some manufacturing technique. And so the Earth, the point of it being called Earthcrawl is that people become desperate, and they decide to basically sell them jobs. They basically participate in going down to the surface and recovering whatever they can, whatever the corporations want you to recover. And sometimes that's capricious, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's lots of digging through and stealing out circuit boards and tearing apart, buildings and stuff, and getting the infrastructure that you need to then go up to the surface or up to the colonies and build more stuff to keep the world going. Or, what I do is I spend a whole bunch of time, as I always have, kind of watching where we're at now and the new things that are coming out in scientifically. You know, we're doing lots of work with silks and things like this, spider silks and other insect silks, um, and everything. So I imagine that silk has always been an important part of the space race anyway. I don't know if you know that one of the layers of the astronaut suits, like in the Apollo missions and everything, was a silk layer. It was specifically designed to do certain things, and so there's a whole bunch of industry now that's looking at silk, which has higher tensile strength than steel and things like this by mass. So it's super useful stuff, and you can grow it. It's just a molecule, and yeah. So those things. It's a very different environment and campaign.
It kind of makes me think. I never played the video games, but watched the TV series. It's kind of almost like Fallout adjacent.
You can think of it like that. I have actually, I'll tell you, I've never played the video games. I've never watched the television show Fallout. But yeah, it's certainly from the visuals that I've seen in passing from my friends like playing the video games and stuff, it seems very similar. Except it's a complete fusion of Mutant Crawl classics and Dungeon Crawl classics. So the one thing that it does do is it embraces what we as humans have, right? So, a lot of science fiction assumes that religion falls by the wayside as people become more enlightened and stuff. You can see this in science fiction, and certainly Earthcrawl doesn't. It has religion. It has you have cult followings and things like this, and you have clandestine secret organizations. You have patrons, just like you have in Dungeon Crawl Classics. You have patron AIs. So these AIs that have survived the apocalypse, that are hunted by the colonies. The colonies have an anti-AI system, and everything, and so they actually publicly execute AIs that are recovered from the surface of the planet, blaming them for the downfall of humanity. Whether that's correct or not is not the issue.
Yeah.
But
Well,
everybody needs a scapegoat.
but the interesting thing where I would say the kind of similarities besides the post-apocalyptic is that there are vaults in Fallout, and there's politics in Fallout within the vaults.
Yeah,
But the other thing is there's where the twist is that there's underlying secrets behind the vaults are not what you think they are. Like there's conspiracies within conspiracies, and so. But anyway, it to me kind of we have two different worlds that intermingle in a way that it's it's not really politically safe in the vaults, but it's also physically unsafe outside. So it's kind of a similar situation where you have the technology and the people and the access to certain things, but you still need to go outside to get resources.
exactly. Yeah, and so one of the things I'm doing is embracing those aspects of humanity, and then building them into the system
But
and
what
stuff.
could be fun too is if there was another competing orbital group.
Oh, there are. So
Ah,
there, I've got like 7 orbital colonies. They're all basically corporation conglomerates,
yeah,
shift alliances. So there's this whole politics structure that this is an interesting thing. So I have a Patreon for Earthcrawl, and one of the things I ask my patrons pretty often is, do you want this to be super setting heavy, or do you want it to be setting light or setting moderate? And they've always come back and told me that they want enough setting that it all makes sense. They want it to be kind of setting moderate, with the idea that if Earthcrawl goes, right, if people buy it and I do more, that I would expand on it, and you would have kind of more in-depth little source books. And so I'm using Traveler, Classic Traveler as the model here. I'm releasing a core box with 3 books, and I've currently got 2 other books planned for it that'll expand on things and give you more information. And with the idea that I could do more after that if
yeah.
people have interest.
So I'm doing the same thing with the Blood Sands. I did
Yeah.
a bestiary to begin with, and then I just recently just a Kickstarter for the kind of a history and then also character classes and things that are character for are focused. And then just plan on putting out zines as I go and build off from there. It
Yeah. So and that's kind of the goal here too. It's like, there is this idea that you could put together an entire campaign setting and have it like, a 300-page book to go to start with. But that would take, I'm a one guy shop,
yeah.
right? That would take me a decade. Like I would be looking at publishing something in my 60s. Um, and I wouldn't, I'd be working on Earthcrawl for a decade before I got to a 300-page book.
But the also advantage is you're getting feedback
And
as you
along the
go.
way, it's growing organically based on feedback, which to me is the best of both worlds, right? This is a long standing piece of of tension in creators. Do I wait? Do I have a team that helps me build something out quite quickly? Right? Think of like Numenera or something like this, right? Do I build Numenera from scratch over a year because I've got five guys writing on it, or whatnot, or is it a one man show, right? And this is more like something like Hyperborea by Taslanian, right? Is it Taslanian? I think it's Taslanian. Um, and where it started out as a little binder book
Yeah.
in a box, and the next book was big because he had a whole bunch more material by then, and then he refined it from there. Or something probably closer to what Nick's doing with Stennard, right?
Yeah.
Stennard is very piecemeal, but he now, Nick now has a goal. He knows where he's headed, or mostly knows where he's headed in the next 2 to 3 years, and everything. But in the meantime, you know, because of the way a single man show works, um, you're working on little pieces at a time, checking them. Does this work? And that's what the open game sessions are for me. It's not that I don't want to hang out with people and play games, but they're designed to be playtest sessions, right? They're designed for me to break things and say, oh, I don't like how that works. They're designed for me to hand new character classes to players and say, this may never make it to the light of day, but let's try it and see what it looks like.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, also breaking up like we have and say is that it mitigates risk because the risk is you could put all this time in there because what you're doing with Earthcrawl and also kind of like what I'm doing with Blood Sands, it's very like it's very specific niche it's not there's risk involved, right? That you
Yeah.
could spend all this time, put it out, and people just like, nah.
And yet, what I hear continuously when people see what I'm talking about, they're, oh, I've been looking for a near future Dungeon Crawl Classic setting. Starcrawl has existed for 7, 8 years in the DCC sphere. It was at one point the best selling third party product system in DCC, according to Goodman. They used to sell a lot of Starcrawl. It's kind of fallen off because they haven't been producing as much lately. But it is this generic far future thing, much more like Traveler, right?
Yeah.
It's in the future, um, and everything far in the future. And I was looking for something that was kind of felt a little more like Twilight 2000, right? But with space. And it's very, I wanted a very grounded setting. Um, I wanted to have I wanted to have magic, but I wanted it to feel like reality, right? I mean, there's a whole bunch of people on our planet who believe in magic, who feel that magic happens, whether it's the hand of God changing things and directing people, or it's, I'm making a wish and putting it under a rock and, things go well for me that week. There's a lot of people. Most of us believe in this at some level, right? Not everybody, but 95% of humanity
Well,
believe
but we're kind of wired that way
we're wired that way.
because it's like I think it's that whole inductive reasoning, right? It's just like it's very fast, but it works for us as a species, but occasionally it creates hiccups.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, So those things are important to me, making sure that all that is represented. And it's also Earthcrawl is a very specific one of the things that is always hard, I have found. It's easy to write just a ton of material and not do much self-editing, not bring it back, right? It is harder to write a ton of material and then edit it down to conciseness. And so one of the design ethos that I have in Earthcrawl is that I don't redundantly rebuild rules. I'm using Dungeon Crawl Classics. I'm using Mutant Crawl Classics. I'm citing those. I outright tell you you need both rule books. I will cite those rule books when I so I don't have to write a rule, right? I'll say you need to go to this page and do this thing.
Right.
And that allows me to be sparse and to focus on the things that I care about. And so you're trying to get there's a density of information that is critical, and trying to find a way to create a product that is nuanced, that is dense, that has all of this stuff in it, all these different levels, but do it in a way that doesn't take up much space.
Yeah, and that's the hard part because you mean if you think about if you're creating the full book, then you have to say, okay, what is strength?
Yeah.
What is intelligence? What is wisdom? How do you roll
Well,
dice?
and if I
Or
and if I do that, the other thing is not only do I have to explain all of that, which I don't really want to do, um, I'm kind of not living up to the spirit of the third party license with Goodman Games, right? The third party license says, you have the right to publish in the DCC space or MCC space, um, at no cost I don't have to pay anything. Joseph looks at the work and he approves or disapproves. But what he's really looking for is this kind of PG-13, any kid who's 13 or above could play this and not be offended by it, right? So if there's gratuitous nudity or there's a whole bunch of really, I mean, violence isn't even a problem, obviously, because it's a combat oriented game. But there's a certain level of family friendliness that Joseph's looking for.
I think he
And
told me he was fine if you go past that.
yeah,
It just needs to be clearly stated in a
right.
way that well, they'd be fine with anything, but that I think, but you're right. He just doesn't want kids he doesn't want, people getting stuff that he feels would be embarrassing.
Yeah, or offensive.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of living up to that ethos and saying, I totally want you to buy Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's a great game, right? I totally want you to buy Mutant Crawl Classics. It's a great game. I happen to want to play both of them together,
Yep.
and I'm going to show you how. And so that even makes that niche smaller, right? Because I'm not creating a huge product that's the whole game. I'm saying you have to have these things, and I'm just giving you the extra rules that aren't covered in this.
Well, I would guess, except for maybe people that you run for at conventions, but I would guess that most of the people buying it already own those two books,
Yeah,
or at least one of the two books.
yeah. So it's not a huge high bar,
Yeah.
but I am making it so that I intentionally am acknowledging that agreement instead of saying, "Hey, I'd like to go ahead and just gut the Dungeon Crawl Classics rulebook and take 30% of it and put it into my game." Right? Do you mind if I publish that? And you know, you could try that. People have. It doesn't always work. And frankly, considering that as a publisher we pay by the page to produce a product, why would I want to redundantly publish a whole bunch of stuff that already exists?
The reason I would say is I think for certain core things that people are already using, I think it's one thing, but I think having to fiddle through books could, depending on the circumstance, be very annoying.
Could be, but I happen to be a guy that likes books, so
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just saying like it's kind of like with I think with Goodman, they think there's a tendency to put like the stat blocks in where the Is that true? Or am I confused with OSC? I think where there's a creature, there's an encounter, an adventure, you tend to put the stat block in there.
Yeah.
Uh, so rather than just, see page, 73 or whatever.
Right, and I'm not doing that. So the one thing Goodman doesn't have, well, they do have now is a monster manual. They have Dangerous Denizens 1 and 2 coming out. Two's coming out here in the next couple months. Um, but they still have this ethos that every monster should be special, right? And so I have spent a huge amount of time going through and making normal animals that we see in places all over the world. Um, you know, really dangerous to people, you know, really explaining how is it that a bear is scary as all get out, right? because because you're playing normal people in Dungeon Crawl Classics, even if you've got or in Earth Crawl, even if you've got a couple spells under your belt. The magic that I'm creating for the game is much more protective, much more anticipatory, a little bit low level, but still very powerful. And so, and then we kind of push spells into the back. You get them, but you only get a couple. They're actually pretty rare.
So in general, it depends on the system. I know with OSC, bears are scary.
Bears should be scary.
And the what I've heard, and I think this is a good truth, if you have to come up with some sort of monster on the fly, they recommend just going to bear and just doing a
Yeah,
bear. Like,
do a bear.
yeah, it's like
I think I was telling my open game night group that I've already statted out 5 different species of bears for Earthcrawl. They're all a little different. Some are big, some are small. They all have unique abilities and stuff like this. Bears. This is one thing is normal animals are they can be really deadly.
yeah,
So they should be. You know,
they look cuddly, but they have these strong jaws and these
yeah,
really nasty claws.
really. So think about it. So why? Here's my hand, and the hand of a grizzly bear is like this, right? The paw goes like this, and it has. If I hit you, flat-handed, I have 4 fingers going to smack your face. Well, it has 4 claws that are the size of they're this big, right?
Yes.
They're dagger size, each one of them, and so
And
it
there's a
doesn't
lot of
make sense.
mass in that hand that's
There's a
that's
lot of mass in that hand, and it's really muscular. So it doesn't make sense that a bear's claw attack should do 1d4 or 1d6 damage. If a bear hits you with 4 claws, that's like stabbing someone with 4 knives, as far as I'm concerned. So, claw damage from a bear is pretty lethal in Earthcrawl.
yeah.
Uh, because I want it to be, right. I want you to go to the surface of the planet and kind of be afraid of what it is you're going to encounter.
Yep. No, that makes sense. So let's go back to the
Yeah.
Patreon. So how many people do you estimate, if you don't know, like how many people do you have subscribed to your Patreon?
I can tell you. I think it's 116.
That's incredible.
Let me look. Hold on. It gives me these stats somewhere. Oh, here it is. Active members, 116, up 2 in the last month. And in the last day, I've had 73 visits. I posted something 3 days ago on environmental hazards. So the idea is that there's roving radiation and biological agents and chemicals and everything kind of moving around the surface of the planet. They have different intensity backgrounds, right? And that these guys, you're down on the surface of the planet and you're like in chem suits, you're in hazmat suits, trying to protect yourself. And so you got like wimpy hazmat suits and you got really buff ones and all this stuff. And so you're down there, yeah. And so I wrote a little article on what is the background kind of environmental hazard. If you get your suit gets punctured, you have to make a essentially like a critical roll to see if you get damaged just by the environment. And I wrote that 3 days ago, and yeah, like 50 people have seen it or something like this now. And it's got some likes. Yeah.
So so people are paying, so what are your how many tiers do you have?
Three tiers, four tiers with free. The vast majority of people are free, right? And I actually try and gear things so that the free people get to see 80% of what I produce. Um, so there's maybe 100 people that are free, and I've got maybe 15 or so that pay something. My tiers are kind of $3 a month, and that's just a attaboy, thank you so much. And you get to participate in polls and stuff like this. And then there's kind of the $5 a month tier, and you get PDFs of everything as I produce it, right? And so I don't just produce, I don't have any sitting right here. Well, I've got parts of it. Like here's a cover to it to an ash can. So I use all of the proceeds from my Patreon for art. None of it pays for anything else. It just pays for art. I've got a couple of artists who are working on Earthcrawl. It's all experimental work. I have model designers, so I've got an urban designer right now who's helping me design things like the look of vehicles and stuff like this. And we create model sheets that then will be communicated to the artists when they need to actually draw those things. Same thing with suits, like hazmat suits and stuff like this. The three levels of hazmat suit, and we created a model sheet for what they should look like, their complexity, how they go together. It's got little notes and everything, and I communicate that to the artist so that they have a guide to understand when I say I need three guys in level one suit, what that means, um, and stuff like this. So most of the money that I get from the Patreon, or 95, 99% of it, goes to producing art of some form or another, which allows me to visualize things. Like I just finished designing this cargo bot, which is this kind of robot driven cargo, kind of like think of it as like a truck, a little light truck. And what would it look like in the future? It's not driven by people. They don't know how to drive. It's got like those aluminum chainmail or titanium chainmail tires like the Mars rovers have and stuff like this. And what is the utility? It's got roll bars and things and cameras and sensor systems and all this stuff all built into it. And all that statted out in the game, but I needed to design it and I needed to communicate it to artists so they could draw it for me. So I hired an urban designer to help me design it.
No need.
And and now we've moved on to there's something, so we don't use rockets in Earthcrawl. They don't like rocket down to the planet and rocket back up. You're high altitude lifted, and so you're basically dropped to the planet, like in an Apollo capsule,
Yeah.
right? And then that mates up with this octagon shaped vehicle called an Ocho because it's got eight parts, and as an homage to Dodgeball, ESPN 8, the Ocho. Uh, so you got to watch the movie if you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen you
Yeah.
will understand what I'm saying. But a couple of my players had watched Dodgeball, and I was like, this has got eight parts. He's like, so it's like an Ocho, and I was like, yeah, it's like an Ocho, and so it's now called the Ocho. So these things are dropped down to the surface, and then they use high altitude lift balloons to get into the upper atmosphere, and then there are, basically shuttles that come by and pick that stuff up and tow it into really high orbit, right? And so, which is a slight stretch. It is a stretch of what we can do now, but inherently, it almost works scientifically. It's such a small lie.
Such a
Stuff,
small.
such a small lie. But most people look at it and they say, "Oh yeah, that makes perfect sense to me," right? And it kind of makes this slow. There's no easy getting off the surface of the planet. When you're there, and you're not going to get rescued, right? And so it creates a sense of isolation. So we're working on these ochos now, which are each of the bays is multi-purpose. It's a storage thing, or fits one of these cargo bots, or it's a living quarters, or it's a little science bay. It has lots of different configurations. And so actually, I just met last Friday with my urban designer to go over that. He and I sat in a Panera and sketched on a couple pieces of paper for about 2 hours.
So,
And
so how do you find an urban designer?
ah, well, the University of Cincinnati has a program called DAP, Design, Architecture, and Art Planning Department, or something like this. and it's in the top five, kind of professional art programs in the U.S. And urban planning and stuff like this. And there are whole classes. There's an entire line on urban designers. So what I did was, if you go to the DAP website, all their seniors post their senior design projects on their own web pages, and they're all linked there. So you can go see what these kids have done in the last couple of years, and you can just source through them and say, "Oh, I like this kid's sketches." And then they have a link, everything's linked out to their website. And so I just found a kid who had designs that I liked. And I didn't use any of those. I just said, "Oh, I like the line work, right? This is the look that I'm looking for." And he had a CV and he had a connection on his website. And I reached out to him. I said, "Do you do, commission work? I don't have huge amounts of money, but I have this project and I'm looking for a guy to help me design what things look like." So yeah, that's how I did that.
No, that's neat.
Yeah, because again, it's that exact function. It's that load, right? You only have so much load that you can handle, and so I know what I want these things to do, but I don't have the time to do all the drawings, and I'm not, I can sit there and sketch on a piece of paper and say, "I want it to kind of look like this. I needs to do these things, and here's the functions that I want to have," and stuff like that. And then this guy knows how to take that and really run with it. And so we'll meet next Friday. He and I are going to meet every 2 weeks, and he's going to bring me sketches, and we'll look at them and talk about them and everything.
Yeah,
So
so it works out good for everybody because he gets to exercise those muscles, build up a portfolio, and then
yep,
you're also and making some money, and you're able to find somebody that's within your budget, able to do what you need them to do that would be difficult for you to do.
yeah, yeah, and exactly. So this kid's taking classes on how to do this, and he can do it digitally. He can do it on paper. He can do it several different ways depending on what I care about, if I care, and um, and exactly that's it. So we come to an agreement. This is how much I can pay for this project, and it needs to have these deliverables, just like any art project. And so it's a collaboration. It's really useful.
Well, and the thing is, you're not really looking for it. You need artists to do drawings, but what you're wanting is you wanting something to be at least scientifically either reasonable and
Yeah,
functional. Like you want realism, even though the setting itself is a bit fantastical. There are aspects of it you want to feel grounded and real, and that you can say, yeah, that this is things that either don't may not exist, but these are following either what could happen in the near future, not
that's right.
just
And so the underlying premise that Earthcrawl design works on is, I look at what current technology says we could do in the next couple of years, and then I project what would that look like 30 years from now, right? Because the apocalyptic event happens in 2072 or something like this, if I remember correctly. So 20, 30 years from now, how far will we have gotten on this idea, right? And then so Mutant Crawl Classics has a basic premise. I'll give you an example of a design decision. Mutant Crawl Classics has a basic premise that in the very far future, this is 50,000 years or 30,000 years in the future, that everything is universal in terms of power supply. You have C cells and F cells and things like this, and anything that's a robot or is energy driven just has a C cell that pops into it, right? And they're interchangeable. And so I looked at that, but if you look at today, we have tons of electronically, basically electrical devices now that have really good batteries, right? All these battery driven devices, and yet there's all these proprietary
yes.
connections. And so I was like, at some point in the next 30 years, that disappears, and we have a standard. And gosh darn it, even if the technology is 300 years old, because that standard had been established before the apocalypse, right? That standard still exists in the colonies. And
You,
so if you go to the surface of the planet and you find a battery that could be usable, it will interface with your stuff, just
well,
because.
from a game standpoint, that's I don't want to say it's necessary, but that's extremely helpful from a game standpoint.
Yep. It solves many underlying problems and gets rid of headaches that players really don't want to role play through. Like,
But you also can make things a resource.
yeah,
Like I need this energy cell. This thing has an energy cell. I need
yep,
that thing.
yeah. So those things are useful and everything. And we talk, I talk about these things with my urban designer, right? I'm like, okay, so this needs to be powered with little batteries. And where are the batteries? Where are they on the device? How do we get to the batteries? Those are conversations that we have and everything. So it's interesting. This is the appeal of Twilight 2000 to me, the original Twilight 2000. Not that there's the Free League one is bad. I've never played it. But when I played the original Twilight 2000, I was in high school and I was on a military base, and we were in Europe. I was
Yeah.
in the at the time, and the Cold War was very real. It was the 80s, the late 80s. Things were not looking great, and that was a different viewpoint. But when I read through, Twilight 2000 would have, the military weapons of the United States, military weapons of the Soviet Union, military weapons of the UK, and things like this, right? And so they would have books that were just dedicated to all. You could basically take a year of Jane's magazine, right? This defense
Yeah.
department level. Here's all the military weapons we're putting out, and this is what their specs are. And you condensed it down into a role playing game source book. And so I kind of want that sort of a system, right? I want it to feel that felt incredibly real to me because I was sitting on an Air Force base and, you know, we had A10s there and there were A10s in the book. And, you could see the weapons, the MPs had, and they were in the book too and stuff. So you're looking for that. I'm looking for that level of granularity and realism without burdening the system and everything. So yeah, there's this again, and you've only got so much space, so you can only devote so much space to different things. So when I'm working on Earthcrawl, everything is by word count, and I have all the chapters identified that I want and what goes in each chapter, and it's really me just having the time or the and I haven't been writing much lately, unfortunately. Um, but having the time to be able to devote to this piece, right? Like I wrote a chapter on cybernetics. I needed cyberware. And Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics doesn't have a cyberware system. So I had to write one. I needed I wanted people to be able to customize robots, and they were non-AI based robots, and everything and stuff like this. So I built a robot system that actually works really well. Every single one of my games, they have robots, which is kind of fun. They're always arguing with their robots, trying to they have to program the robot to do what they want it to do. And it makes what's called an AI recognition roll, which is from Mutant Crawl Classics. And if you succeed at the AI recognition roll, the robot understands what you're tasking it with, and can execute the orders. Can't execute outside of that, but can execute those orders. And so players will sit there and they'll say, I want it to go over and I want it to do this. And if they've got if then statements following off of if
Yeah.
it encounters this, then it does this. And if it encounters that, then it does this. And then they make a programming role based on how complex that is.
It's
And
Robo Rally.
it is Robo Rally. And so, but it's a lot of fun to get your robot to go do something.
Yeah.
And then you'd never figure out what it needs to do, right?
Right.
It's
Or
just the
something random would happen to make it all of a sudden like, wait a minute.
Yeah. So the guys are always like, no, I got to reprogram my robot
What's
because I
funny
don't.
when you start doing those kind of like the robot rally is that because you're doing three-dimensional space and things flip around, you start and its facing is different than you. You can lose track of left and right. So something
Yeah.
as simple as that can turn into the program was great up until I said turn left instead of turn right.
Yep. Yeah. And so that's been interesting. Those are aspects of Earthcrawl that I find fascinating. I don't know that anybody else does, but
Well,
the
the Star Frontiers, they had a group of people skills for programming robots. But I don't
yeah.
know that any single, I could be wrong, but I don't know any single adventure they gave you the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. Well, here you You can buy a robot, and the other thing that's unique about Earthcrawl is I had to envision the economics of the future. What is this like? How do these people, how much money do they have? What's wealth measured against? Um, you're going down to I had them for years going down to the surface of the planet. And I just said, okay, so you get a couple things. And that wasn't, but they were clearly going back to a place and kind of putting on an open auction, this at an exchange and selling all the things they've recovered because you're being hired to do that, right? Um, I wanted to be able to make a system where the players could team up. Their characters could team up and form eventually get enough money to form a little corporation and maybe get their own little Ocho and work out contracts and everything to get dropped to the surface of the planet and have competitors and things like this. There's a lot of fun in that. Traveler does a lot of this kind of stuff too. Um, it's very different than your standard DCC game, but it's still kind of really engaging. And so I wrote this whole profit and leverage system that is actually, I think, the most important 5,000 words I've written for Earthcrawl yet. And it lays out the wealth mechanic, credit, and what happens when you're in debt. And there's indentured slavery essentially in Earthcrawl, right? There you pay for oxygen, you pay for you know food and water, and you pay for radiation shielding in the colonies, and then you pay for where you stay. All that costs money, and so how much does it cost? Depends on the colony you're on, and the advantages of that colony, right? And then and stuff like that. So all that's really built in, and then as an ancillary to that, that allowed me to understand how much I should be giving players for what they're recovering, right? They get a percentage. It's kind of like a company town. In the 19th century, America had all these utopian company towns, and they would pay out money in company script. That's what happens in Earthcrawl. And so, there's this whole system where the company is paying, basically corporations are paying you one little percentage point basically of what the thing sells for on the open market on the auction exchange. And so then the players, I built that and they were like, okay, this is great, we finally have some money, we want to buy this, we want to buy that, we don't have enough money, so we're going to pool together and get this and everything. And then they were like, well, you know what, we next time we go down, we want to negotiate with the corporation, we want a couple other things other than just getting paid. And so from there, I had to develop this entire negotiation system. And so I had to, we had to write not very long rules, but rules on a mechanic on how you negotiate with a corporation. You know, do you have the, does the corporate, is it desperate to have you do this? Or do you have a whole bunch of competition? You're not the only man in town, right? Those things are all factored in. And so it allows players to kind of bargain for different rights and stuff like this.
Those really came out because of the play testing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Didn't
you never
exist
considered
before.
that, and then somebody said, "Hey, wait a minute."
That's right. So I wrote this profit and leverage thing, and there was like one, maybe four sentences on negotiations. And that was it. And the players, were like, okay, well, I happened to hand this out in my open game and said, this is going to become something we're going to play test, right? This is something we're going to play test starting tonight. And they read through it really quickly and they came back and they said, okay, well, it just so happened they were between missions, right? They had just gotten back to the colonies with a whole load of stuff, and then they were just about to go again. And they were like, well, then we want to negotiate all this stuff, right? We want the right for this, and we want this right, and we want this. And you had to, and I, so I, we quickly wrote down, it ballooned. That section, negotiation section, went from being like four sentences to being 3 or 4 pages, maybe 1,500 words, and like overnight, because they were just like, all these ideas were just flowing, and the open play testers were handing me ideas, and then my home games were handing me ideas, and that's really great. That's when all of the juices are flowing and the writing is easy, and and it's fast,
But
and
I
you're
think
like,
that's what it takes. Because I mean, one person sitting down and just creating the whole thing in a vacuum isn't nearly as good as when you have these exchanges and these issues come up, and I mean, it's you really do kind of need input from different people to make it as good as a product as it can be.
Yeah, yeah. And people, and so when I finish a chapter, I try and keep these chapters short, kind of 3 to 4,000 words. So we're really packing a lot of material in here. Um, when I hand it over to players, my buddies and everything, I'm like, take this apart and tell me where it sucks, right? And then we'll actually use it in the game. And there have been a couple of games where I just like we got into it and I'm like, yeah, this doesn't work. Well, I'm just okay, guys, let's just chat tonight because this sucks. What sucks about it? I
Yeah.
here's what I'm perceiving. I don't like how it does X, right? And then one of my buddies would be like, well, I don't like how it does Y, right? And somebody else would be like, well, I think Z sucks, right? And so those are really, really now they're kind of fun anyway, because we just have these general chat sessions and these are people I've known for 20, 30 years. Um, and they're ribbing me because I wrote something that was crap and things like this. But at the same time, what comes out of it is a much better product.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. You you can those you have pamphlets available for purchase at conventions, right?
Right. So the patrons get an orange cover. This is why this one's orange. This happens to be a damn I had accidentally printed the same thing on both sides. Um they get an orange cover. Those are limited. Oh, sorry, there's a $10 reward tier. That's when they get I mail those things out. At the $10 a month reward tier, you're getting about a product a month. I usually deliver them in quarterly batches because like I'll write the profit and leverage section and then I will put together an art description and send it off to an artist and that takes a month or two to get everything finished. And so then I'll lay it out, put it into a booklet and I print them and staple them and assemble them myself. And at the $10 level you get I get an orange version of everything that I do. It's limited. There's about 10 people who get those. And then we'll playtest those for a while and I'll find a whole bunch of errors. And so I always have one. I don't have them here, but in the other room, I have a stack of them that I just write annotated on the front. And that I know that's my desk copy and that I'm going to make notes in it.
Yeah.
And so I'll write it up and in the middle of the game, I'll just, yeah, that sucks. And we'll just rewrite it right here. And then I will go back and edit it later. And a couple months later, I'll have a whole bunch of edits. I'll issue a new draft of it and we'll get a yellow cover. And those yellow covers I sell. And so, but they'll also be limited. Maybe I think I've sold maybe 20 or 30 of any given one. So they're super kind of rare. These are, and when I call them ash cans. So I don't know if you know about the ash can tradition.
I just thought they were made of just the cheapest, the quickest way of putting it out.
Yeah,
There's no
they're meant
frill.
they're meant to be a marketing product. In the 30s and 40s, ash cans came out as a way to advertise comics and like weird stories and stuff like this and everything. And little groups would put on ash cans, and they're just a preview of what's to come. The comics industry picked them up again in the 80s and 90s. As a matter of fact, not Marvel or DC, but the company that
Eclipse?
Todd McFarlane founded.
Oh, but I think Eclipse did some stuff with like Airboy, different things. They
They
compiled a
might
bunch of
they
shorts.
might have, yeah, but I cannot remember who they are. Image
Yeah.
as the new at the very opening phase of Image, ash cans were really common, right? Because I still have ash cans for like several of those Image comics. I haven't looked at them in years, but I have them in storage. And so they did all these ash cans, and so I call this an ash can. It's not the final product. It is it doesn't have all the bells and whistles the final product will have, but it's a representation of where I'm at, and anybody can buy them and get a good idea and play test it, and play with it and see what they think. So just like Nick, I have kind of class guides and I have some pamphlets, not many. I don't write well in a pamphlet format. It's a little too short for me. Um, and then I have like the profit and leverage guide, which actually is a pretty big book. It's like 22 pages, 24 pages long. By the time I got it all done and got a couple cool pieces of art for it and stuff, and basically gave you an understanding of the different tiers of wealth and everything and stuff like this, and how that works. We had to invent a way of spending money, because I wanted to be generic, but I didn't want to put super fine prices on everything. Although I ended up getting pretty, everything's got a price, but I didn't want you to like running around with copper pieces and gold pieces. So yeah, and then I had to envision what's the payout on the Mona Lisa, right? Your party finds the Mona Lisa and they bring it back to the colonies. How much is that worth, right? And stuff like that. So that there's a table that gives you just some parameters in the back.
Yeah, right. Because some stuff would be, I mean, stuff that would be like, I would imagine, like premium consumable stuff
Yeah,
would be high for certain people, but then like that high art, there's only be a small number of people able to,
afford it.
yeah, or want it. It's just so it's like it's not going to be like it is today, but it's still going to be valuable, but only to a certain group.
Yep, yep. And then like music. So you think about it, it's like when the apocalypse happens, the orbital spaceships or space stations, they didn't have everything, right? They've only got a portion of the knowledge of humanity, just the stuff they really needed up there, you know. And so droves of music and literature and textbooks and everything were just lost. And so part of what these guys are recovering. Um, so I started writing adventures. Now, my idea of writing adventures is different than other people's. Um, I don't write an adventure that isn't like a box set. It's got lots of props and visual aids and things like this. And this sensory cue system that I've been working on for a couple of years now. And that's nice, but it's expensive to produce and it takes a lot of effort and requires a lot of work. And I needed something, and it's not really situated for con play. So the problem I was having, like you encountered when I ran at Gamehole for you last year, right? I'm not really a short form player to begin with, or runner to begin with. That's just not my format. Um, so I came up with these delves, and they're highly specific. It's like this is a building. You're going to search through a building tonight.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to get to. And inside this building are like 20 punk rock albums, right? And here's the punk rock albums that you're going to recover potentially, and stuff like this. And this is how much they're worth, and that you'll get for them. And there's always a randomizer. It's like this is worth a D4, this is worth a D5, credits or whatever profit. And so there's a little bit of randomization into it. You never know if somebody just before you has come up with the same thing, or are there previous versions that have been
Right.
recovered. And this just happens to be a little more pristine or not so nice and stuff like that. And so I wanted there to be a little bit of variation in it. So yeah, so I came up with those delves. They're short form adventures. They can also be plunked in because it's just a location, agnostic of a plot.
Right.
It can be plunked into anything. So yeah.
That makes sense. Well, I think we're approaching or exceeding an hour, I think, at this moment.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
Seems to
so
be.
we're approaching that the time space continuum. We probably ought to cut it uh, cut it off for this moment and continue at another day.
Whenever you want, Jeff, I'm more than happy to come on. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and so you got Earthcrawl. Uh, it's going to be. When do you plan on releasing that?
So my release schedule right now is House of the Petrified Frog will go to Kickstarter in about 2 weeks.
Okay, so the House of Petrified Frog is a DCC product.
Yep, and it is the first in a series of products that I call sandbox set pieces. They are again story agnostic, highly detailed locations. And I wrote House of the Petrified Frog about 4 years ago. I've run it several times at Gen Con and other conventions and stuff. It is a thinking man's Tomb of Horrors type
Okay,
of adventure, right? It's you need to be smart when you're going through this thing. But it's intended to give a judge a location that they can populate as they want. There's some stuff there, but if they want to put their bad guy there, they can, or they can just have you raid it and steal some things, stuff like that. So that is a project that is going forward in about 2 weeks. It'll be a box set, comes with 3 different size
oh
cards.
wow.
It'll have environmental cards where you'll see the location. It'll have monster cards or adversary cards where you'll see the adversary on a tarot size card, and these sensory cue cards. Where as you move through the location, what I've done is I've shortened box text, and then I've shifted a lot of that to other players so they can narratively give feedback to the game. So it enmeshes the players as part of the narrator, and so that's coming out. And then, but I but I've got a long window of final development on that. We've signed in one artist. It's about 80 pieces of art that I need to complete it. It's not a small project, right? When I said it is lavishly produced, I mean it is lavishly produced. It is intended to be like, here, this is what's going on. You see this, and here's some cool things that you see that, and you see that, or you smell this, and it gives you all these little hints and clues about what's going on. And if you're smart, you'll figure those things out and communicate them. But players often don't. I'm always amazed at what players find out and then never tell the rest of the party. So that it's kind of it's a neat little location. I'm glad to finally get it out. If it goes well, I have some other sandbox set pieces I may develop in the future. I've got a list of ideas. And then Earthcrawl, the Kickstarter was just approved by Kickstarter a couple of days ago, and so I'm in the final process of finishing it and getting price quotes and stuff like this, and prototyping things. But the main game and everything, the main box set with 3 booklets and a delve, like an intro delve,
Yeah.
and then that'll be the main box. There'll also be an adventure called Scrap Metal that'll be its own box set, um, and maybe a couple other little
You
delves.
can turn on the landing page, like a preview landing page before you
It's on.
launch. Okay.
It's on now for both of these. They're both live.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So both of these are live. You can go check them out. Earthcrawl, House of the Petrified Frog has got a little more detail about what's going to be in it, but Earthcrawl will get its landing page will get more detail over the next month or so as I have time to populate it and finalize plans. And then I think it will probably go to Kickstarter. It'll go live in June, I think is kind of the idea right now.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of activity trying to get that, especially when you're starting adding boxes. So,
Well, I love boxes, as you know. And and I've got a box partner here in Marion, Indiana, it's only about 2.5 hours away. So I can go pick up my boxes by hand and bring them home and hand assemble everything, which reduces the cost. Um,
so is there gluing involved?
I'm not doing any gluing, but they are.
Oh, you said hand assembling.
Oh, I'm hand assembling what goes in the box. So
Oh, I see. Yeah.
the
Yep,
box
yep.
set gets hand assembled, but
I
I'm
thought maybe you're
actually
assembling the box. Like, well, if they die cut it and
yeah.
crease
Well,
it.
so there will be. I think I'm going to die cut a. I think I'm actually personally going to die cut a cardboard insert in the box that'll hold the different cards that come with the games and stuff. This is something I've been playing with, as you know, for a while, and um, and I'm trying to find that balance of how much time do I have to do everything by myself, and outsourcing some things and making it better with on my own.
Yeah, I need
So
to get you and Nick and maybe one other person to talk about boxes sometime because
yeah,
I'd like to try. I think it's probably not even in my mind, don't think it's a good idea. It's something I like to do at least once.
let me tell you this. I think you should do an Appendix N box set or box. Don't, you know, and then I actually sell the highest rate of back issue resells for Tales from the Smoking Worm are box sets. Issues 1 through 3, 4 through 6, 7 through 9, and very soon at the end of this year, 9 through 12. And I sell more of those boxes than I do individual issues by a factor of 5.
Wow,
The
I can
box
believe it.
sets
Yeah.
really sell, and people really like them. And so consistently, I sell every Kickstarter without fail 30 to 50 boxes. So it is a very good return on investment. It's an excellent product, and people really appreciate it because it provides a lot of storage potential and damage reduction to their zines. Would you
Yeah,
be?
I could try doing that. I was also was thinking for the Blood Sands of offering
Yeah, it's
that.
a great idea. As you get closer to what is going to be, and maybe eventually everything just becomes a box set, and you sell it.
Yeah. And I was also thinking about a box set would maybe contain other things.
Yeah.
So,
So
or I'd say box set. It's like you could buy, everything in the box set, or you could buy the box, but the box might come with character sheets, with a, screen,
yeah.
maybe, a map with a, whatever, what I'm looking for. It's a booklet about a location. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
I call those delves.
yeah. So, but who knows? Maybe some dice with a crayon. Who
Yeah.
knows?
The way it should be. So yeah. So there'll be boxes and everything. Then there'll be scrap metal, which will be the initial box set adventure, and there'll be other things that go with it. But that's the primary Earthcrawl starter set.
Well, that sounds exciting.
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, it's so much work. I'm going to have to put Tales from the Smoking Worm on hold for a year. So
Wow.
after issue 12, I'm going to take a year hiatus from Smoking Worm to focus on finishing production on House of the Petrified Frog, but also getting Earthcrawl well in hand and making it happen.
Well, those are major, major projects.
Yeah. Yeah, if you think about it, over the last 2 years, I have over 90 pieces of artwork for Earthcrawl already.
Wow.
So, it's a real, and I'm not one to skimp on art. I love art, and so yeah, so it's been a lot of fun to work with people to design what it looks like.
Oh yeah. No, it's interesting both to see what you imagine come to life, or to see people's interpretation of what you've described come to life.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of my favorite parts of publishing.
Yeah, when I did the first Journey of the Madlands, the guy I wrote these creature descriptions. They're based on real life creatures, but monstertized. And I come to realize after I got art back from him that he wasn't familiar with these insects.
And they look radically different.
Yeah, but I thought, you know what? That's okay. That's okay because it's kind of like I imagine, like with the was it like like that was like the Renaissance time. People go to Africa and they would, maybe post-Renaissance, they would do these artistic descriptions of, or I'd say artists would render like a rhinoceros or a lion or whatever, but I think it was based on descriptions. They never seen it, and then what you get is pictures of things that don't look like rhinoceri or with as lions.
Exactly, right? So it was just this, hey, somebody's describing this to me and I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah,
And so it's totally different then, right? Yeah.
yeah. Well, very cool. So it sounds like you got everything lined up for a very exciting 2026.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty close. I've been writing on Earthcrawl for 2 years. Yeah, even though I haven't written much on it in the last 6 months, it's been very piecemeal, but I still have been churning out stuff because I've just got so much done. And I think I only have a couple 5,000 words, maybe 6,000 words left to have a complete rough draft done, and then I'll send that away for editing and be able to work on other things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a continual process of the main thing just being consistent and putting things, and you get there eventually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It can be hard. You really have to. For me, you have to have that inspiration to hit something running. Um, so it's good to have artist feedback, and player feedback is so helpful.
Oh yeah, no, no, that's something I plan on doing more in 2026 is running games and trying to do more playtesting and help develop not only just the playtest to you know find direction, but also to help market the books as well. So
Yeah, I think you'll do well. I think it's well worth the time and effort to get involved with that.
Yeah, and that's where I think maybe some conventions. I was just talking to somebody today. I may just target different conventions for different reasons. So, maybe some conventions aren't really great for selling, but maybe I'll run a bunch of games, or maybe some I'll do both. So,
Yeah, I mean, so I know that like Nick and Lou and everything, when you can see them come off of a convention with this kind of like, they're inspired, right? They've done a whole bunch of stuff. Ed Stanek, I see that in his face too. He's excited. Something's happened that it's got his brain thinking about, oh, I'm going to change this. I'm going to do this. And so certainly it helps with direction and everything. And so,
yeah, the thing is, what's different about those people is, so they have more energy than I do at the end of the day. So.
you are correct. I think you've noticed that I don't normally run anything in the evenings either.
Yeah.
So I use conventions as a great way to get inspired and excited by talking to friends
Yep.
and like-minded individuals, and that's what I find exciting about conventions for the most
So
part.
so Lou, we went to North Texas, and he would. So the booth. There's no. I mean, the area for the dealer hall was open the whole time. So basically, from 8 to, I don't know, midnight, whatever, it was open. And so I would be there from like 8 to 8. And I just go to my room and just lay and stare at the ceiling and just try and for about a half an hour, 45 minutes of just trying to reorientate myself. But Lou would be out and not get back into the room till about 1:30.
Yeah,
He would be up at 7. And I didn't see any dip in energy level.
and that guy is wired. I don't know how he does it because
And
I'm a
maybe
person.
occasionally we'd be sitting in a booth and he would just kind of like space out for a bit, that he'd come back. But in
Yeah,
general, he would hit it hard like every single day, day after day after day. It's like,
yeah, good, good for him.
yeah.
I don't have that much energy.
No, so I think yeah, people like him, and so I gotta be more strategic. If I want to run games, it's probably going to be like one game and per day or something like that, and
Yeah.
figure out
Well,
when
and
it's
that
going to
and
be.
that's why that local like open play has been so helpful for me. First of all, I have a real hard problem at conventions with noise.
Yes, I
And
agree. Me too.
that kills me. And it ruins my enjoyment of what could otherwise be a good game. Whereas
Yes.
when I go to a game store, it's almost never that noisy.
So
And
for me, what it is I think what happens is the noise make me it makes me it hard, I have to concentrate very hard to listen, and the concentration causes me to I can lose focus.
yeah,
It's exhausting, and I lose focus,
yeah,
and that's what the issue is for me. The noise is more of the it's very easy for me to start going back to my phone or do spacing out or whatever as I'm struggling to listen. Does
yeah.
that, do you have something similar, or is it different for
It,
you?
it is hard for me to hear players.
Yeah.
And because it's hard for me to hear players, it's hard for me to respond to them. And the noise level is so great. I'm not, I'm a pretty soft spoken guy, right? And so the noise level is so great that I have people have a hard time hearing me. And so when they can't hear me and I can't hear them, we can't you can't communicate and you can't have a good rapport. And so there have actually been a couple times when I was at GaryCon a couple years ago when I was running Earthcrawl playtests and I was in a room with like 5 or 6 other tables, and it got so loud, I literally could not hear the guy next to me, who is like almost shoulder to shoulder with me, right? And I finally had to stand up and just shout the room to quiet and say, I get that you're all having a good time, but could we pull it down to an indoor voice? Right? I mean, because there are people who are just guffawing and they're like flying all over the room. They're so happy. And I'm like, that's great, man. But could you make it a little more quiet? Because
But
I can't hear my player.
so I think what happens is, so we had a game, usually have a board game meetup at my house once a year. It's a Jones Con.
Uh-huh.
it's gotten smaller, but we had two tables downstairs, and my wife is at one table. We were at another table, and they were just loud, and so we went upstairs because it was just very loud, and we had a table upstairs, so we played there. And my wife later on said it got a lot quieter when you guys weren't there.
Yeah.
So what happened was they're kind of loud, but we were also being more loud to overcome their loud,
Yep.
and we were probably making it way worse.
Yeah.
But we couldn't tell that we were being loud, and they couldn't tell they were being loud. So it's kind of yeah. So those rooms, you're right. There's people being loud, and it can escalate, especially when you deal with those concrete walls. There's not if they had more dividers. I think they try and mitigate that in North Texas with like room dividers, the soft.
Oh, do they have those there? Well, see now then that North Texas just went way much higher on my list of cons to attend. So
So do you think you ever? So you think you may show up there sometime?
yeah, yeah, it's in like second week of June, right?
Yes,
So I just
first
have
week
to
of
see.
June maybe.
I just need to see if it conflicts with Origins,
It's a
which I
very it's so would you go to sell? Would you go to
now I would just they already have a long Goodman Games has a long-standing agreement with Black Oath Publishing or think
Black Blade?
Black Blade, John Hirschberger's, Taco John, his group, and so they rep North Texas for Goodman Games. And even if they didn't, I have a Texas rep, Matt Robertson,
Okay.
Grape Ape, and he runs. He goes to a lot of Texas cons, so it wouldn't be me repping it. I would go down just to have fun.
So the people it is a very focused it is a very focused con. It is definitely its own thing. And I was surprised financially how well I did there. So I mean, people there are, it's generally obviously not locals. So a lot of people that are there are really serious about their games.
Yeah,
And they're
good,
they're there because they've got money to fly in and hotels, and they are there to maximize their enjoyment.
good. Oh, that sounds like a great con. Yeah,
Yes. It's like,
so that's what you want.
yeah, it's like 500 people, so it's not anything too crazy. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so anyway. Well, we better wrap this up. It's now a little bit past. So look forward to seeing those Kickstarters come out. Maybe if you'd send me the links, I'll put those in the show notes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's probably too late for maybe not if you haven't made plans. People haven't made plans to Cincinnati Con it's not Cincinnati Con. What's it
CincyCon,
called CineciCon?
CincyCon.
CincyCon. Yeah, it's so it'll be coming up next. When is it? Next
It's
week?
this weekend.
This weekend? Yeah.
And if you happen to be in the Cincinnati area, Sunday is 100% free. So you get a free badge to come in on Sunday.
Oh, what a deal.
Yeah. So come see us on Sunday.
Yep. Well, thanks for joining me, Trevor, and we'll have to have you back on sometime soon.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate it.